Hello again, welcome to Paintersblock. I'm your host, Anthony Ryden, and today we will be covering the Armored Mega Gargant and how I use Slapchop to finish some of his armor and just make it a little bit easier for myself. And here we go, we're going to get started. So we're just going to start grabbing all our utensils to make Slapchop a little bit easier, and I find that the makeup brush really helps out. You can get a cheap set, I'll put a link down below, hi tomato. And then I like to use titanium white, same as Bob Ross. And a neutral gray from ArmyPainter. You can use whatever gray you want, but I'll put all my paint down in the description below. I'll put a few links just in case you want to follow exactly. And then just make sure you're starting off with an Abaddon black or a Chaos black primer, or just a black primed surface. That'll make the Slapchop effective. You need these dark, deep recesses to create the shadows in Slapchop. And then the next step you're going to do is you're going to grab the neutral gray or the gray and put some on your makeup brush. And you're going to dry brush primarily in this method. In the dry brushing, you're going to be really, really strong about putting on the gray all over. This is going to build up all your midtones, and you're going to need this. So don't be too shy about putting your grays all over, because you're going to need this. You don't need as much black as you think you might. Now I'm using this Slapchop method because it's a very easy, basic, and it's kind of quite in right now. It's easy to master, and it just takes a easy way of making highlights and midtone and giving a little bit more depth to whatever you're painting and speeding up the process. And with so many different little pieces that I'm going to be working on, especially on this chest piece, this is going to simplify a lot of the steps for me. And I won't have to go in and build up my midtones and my highlights specifically for each piece of armor. And this now I can just make my life a lot easier. So doing what I did before with the gray, I'm going to grab the titanium white and use my makeup brush to dry brush this all over. I'm going to test it on my hand first, just make sure that it's the right consistency. If you put too much of this white on, you're going to definitely you're going to drown out certain areas. You don't want that. This is the step that you're going to want to take slowly. Just keep brushing little areas here and there, one brush at a time, just boosting that brightness ever so much every single time until you get it to the way you want it. These highlights are really fun, and they're going to add, just in the future, they're going to add a lot more. So you're going to be able to add more OSL light, some more zenithal lighting, whatever you want. This is going to allow you to have that type of freedom and have that type of depth to your color and all of these pieces of armor. So just going in, you're going to use that makeup brush. Now these makeup brushes are absolutely great. They're just fabulous for dry brushing, so I definitely recommend getting some. I'm going to put some in the links below in my description. Pretty much my whole setup if you want it. So the next part we're going to do is we're going to be grabbing the oak brown, and we're going to be really thinning this out. Now this is going to be the base to our gold onto the stormcast shield. That is his badge for his cape, and it's going to create the nice base so that we have these dark recesses we don't have to use a wash for. These washes are really hard to use when you're slap chopping, and slap chop tends to not look so great with metallics unless you actually use the correct color underneath. So with gold you want to use brown, and with silvers you want to use blue. So right now we're using oak brown for this, and we're just going to cover any parts that we're going to make gold. And this is good because also golds don't lay very well the first time, so you'll have to put like a second coat, and this will remove that process and not drown out our highlights and our midtones that we've just spent all that time building up. Now using this brown for our base for our gold is really a nice, interesting way. I learned this from Ninjan. I love his channel. He's really cool. Has a lot of fun methods, and he also uses browns for his golds. And I really liked it because it actually adds that shadow and that depth to your gold in these recesses. Then you don't have to put the wash and worry about that pooling. You can add that later if you really want, but honestly it looks pretty good without it. So I think I have to give that to him. This is a great method, and I think it works very well when you're slap chopping to give it that little extra oomph. Now after you grab that gold, or after you grab that brown, I kind of noticed around, and I wanted to tie it more so in, so I'm going to put it also on the sun, make that a golden sun. And I'm thinking I'm going to make the background, the actual plate to the shield, deep blue for the stormcast blue kind of look. It'll look really nice and look extra royal, so it'll be more like a badge for his cape. And if you like what we've got going on, please leave a like, follow us here on YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, and maybe hit that notification bell and see what else we got going on. We're going to be posting every other day, or every 2 days. Okay, so the next step we're going to be doing is grabbing our stormcast blue or a deep blue, or a contrast blue would be the best. Really, any contrast color will work for this step. This is the nice part about the slap chop when you're making these plated pieces. So like with Space Marines and whatnot, if you do it like this, preferably something with a little bit more texture. So maybe more like an orc. You always see it on orcs, or like scaly surfaces. So Seraphon would be a great choice for slap chop as well. That you can really use the fading in of the grays into the white and with the black to really give this cool transition to your color and make these pieces a little bit more interesting than just a flat piece of blue. And it's pretty easy to work with too. You just move it around, and if you get it a little bit somewhere, you just cover that up. And it's going to work well with the colors that we're working with, because later on when we use a silver to create a very nice shine to our gold, the silver works well with blue. So when we get a little bit of too much blue on the gold, we can use that silver over the blue, and it's all right. It's going to create a depth to our shine. The slap chop coming to good use. It's really made that blue a little bit more interesting. Our brown is all in place, so I think now we can move on to the greedy gold. And I love this gold from ArmyPainter, and I tend to notice that ArmyPainter paints are already pretty thinned out, and you don't need to thin it as much as, like, say, Citadel paints. Plus they're not in that pot, so they're a little easier to deal with. So I've been kind of leaning towards the ArmyPainter as of late, but they're still my choice favorites out of Citadel. I'll probably still be leaning into as well. But once you get your greedy gold exactly the right consistency that you would like it, just a little bit glazed basically, so that you can still see through it, you can start applying this to all the places that we had already applied that brown. And this is great because this brown is going to act as like what we'd usually do when with the old method of painting gold, at least from the 90s. You paint that gold, then you put a wash, and then you put a highlight, and that wash would act as your shadow. But with this, you have your shadows already baked in, basically, or baked in for my film days. It's already in the gold, so you don't have to worry about that as much. And if you want to add any more of that shadow, it's going to be a lot easier later. But primarily, now all we have to do is work on the highlights, which is so much easier. And with the right type of silver, a very, very bright silver, or a chrome if you have it, it looks so nice with the gold. I really like it. So, what I'm doing here is grabbing that greedy gold, and I'm just going over and lining all of the little sun bolts, or the thunderbolts, and I'm lining the edges, and I'm just reapplying that gold onto the edges once again, so we can redefine our gold and get ready for the chrome that we're going to add in, just giving more layer and depth to our shadow and to the highlights. So once we got that, let's see, I'm going to do it a little bit more. Now, you want to really work on these highlights. This is where you're going to take your time. You're going to build up these highlights, and if you're doing a true slap chop, you're not going to do any of this highlighting stuff. If you just want to get this in and out, you could be done. We are done in 10 minutes. You're in and out of the door. You got your shield. But if you want to make it look a little bit nicer, and still take away about, like, you're still doing 25% of the time that anyone else would be doing to paint something this effectively normally, you can still do this, and using pretty much the same exact paint you already had out. So if you had it in your wet palette, this is just a little bit extra you could do anyways on top of what you had. And there you go. It already looks really nice, and it's got that built-in shade and shadow, and it's got that nice rich gold. So now we're just going to fix up any little details. So I know sometimes I hit a little bit of that gold into the blue, so I'm just going to go in and really dig into that depth into the edge, and that's going to actually make the edge of our shield a little bit more lifted because of how dark the blue is on the ridges and how much depth that gives to how highlighted that shield is going to look. It's going to look really nice and give this really nice contrast to everything that we're doing here. And that just goes to whatever you're painting, try to make everything build into each other so that it doesn't take away from each other, instead it just amplifies more and more. And this is what I use for my chrome substitute, but chrome is great. Shining silver from ArmyPainter, whatever really bright silver you have is going to go well for this part. Now after you've gotten that shiny silver nice and thinned out, just enough on your brush. Now you see here I'm not using the very tip. I'm using the belly right before the tip to try to hit all of these raised edges. I'm trying to make sure I don't hit anything on the recesses as much as I can. And you're just going to want to hit everything that you want the light to make look the shiniest. So like the tip of the nose for the sun, the ridges of the lightning, the ridges of the shield. This is just going to go with what we just did with the gold, but now you're going to tap it with the silver or the chrome, and you're just going to tap it just a little bit less so that it's looking more like a glint in the sun. Now, I just want to say thank you for coming in and spending your time with us, and I hope you enjoyed yourself in learning this slap chop method. If you liked what we did, or if you saw anything that we didn't do right, or if you just wanted to tell us what you wanted to see next, or something in the future that you'd like us to work on, please leave it in the comments below. I'd love to talk to you all and learn from you. And thank you so much, and I hope we helped you break your painter's block.